have all that.
Bert, what's the difference on number 5? Is this revised conditions? Okay, okay. 4 o'clock.
Oh, we all gonna be gone.
We better be out here by 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Me too.
That's why I look at my
I'm
mom
thinking about
thinking,
2:30.
Yeah, too. Oh, no,
They're not gonna
we're
ask
not gonna be here.
All
We
good.
won't be here that long. Okay, well, we gonna work to get to it.
I'm ready if y'all are ready.
Oh, here comes Beth, so we should. I roll mine. I'm tall. My knees can't be under the chin.
Welcome to the December 5th meeting of the Mobile City Planning Commission. I would like to take a moment to review our general operating procedures. Our meeting is divided into 2 sessions, the public hearing session and deliberation session. In the public hearing session, an application or group application on the agenda is called. It makes his or her presentation. Commission members ask questions, if any. Members of the public make their comments. On 4, people may speak for an agenda item or project and 4 again. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes, subject to questions by the commission. After 4 minutes, a loud beep will indicate 1 minute left to speak, and at this point, please summarize your comments. After all opposition speakers have finished, the applicant will be given time to respond. If you do intend to speak, please come to the podium, speak to the microphone, and give your name and address for our minutes. Please direct all comments to the commission only and not to the applicant or the audience, and please remember to speak directly into the microphone. On routine applications, the applicant may simply raise his or her hand if there are no objections to the staff recommendations. I will then announce that the applicant is in full agreement with those recommendations. If there are any questions, the applicant will be given an opportunity to respond. After hearing all applications, the commission will go into deliberation session. In the deliberation session, commissioners discuss each application with input from the staff as necessary, but with no input from the audience. The commissioners then vote each application, and the results of the voting can be learned from the planning department. If some issues arise in the deliberation session that were not addressed in the public hearing, the chairman has the discretion either to allow additional comments pertaining to those issues in order to resolve them, or call for the application to be held over for discussion at a future meeting. Occasionally, one or more commission members may recuse themselves from discussing and on a given application. A recusal does not necessarily mean the member is directly involved with the application or the applicant. Depending upon the circumstances, ethical rules may require recusal when there is only the slightest appearance of a conflict of interest. If a regular member recuses, a supernumerary will vote in their stead unless both supernumeraries are already voting due to absences. The Planning Commission makes final decisions subject to appeal on subdivisions, planning approvals, plan unit developments, PUDs. The Planning Commission only makes recommendations on zoning applications with the council making the final decision. Please turn off, mute, or silence all cell phones at this time. Commissioners and staff, please remember to turn on microphones when speaking. Roll call, myself, Ms. Libby Latham. Here. Mr. Cart Blackwell. Here. Ms. Shirley Sessions.
Here.
Mr. Matt Anderson.
Here.
Ms. Bess Rich.
Here.
Mr. Don Hembry.
Here.
Mr. Bill Goodlow. Here. We have a quorum. We'll begin with holdovers. Item number 1, 3703 O'Shell Road, Chinaberry subdivision. recommended for tentative approval. Applicant present.
Jerry Bird, Bird Surveying Company. The applicant would like to ask for one more holdover for 2 weeks till December 19th.
Is there any problems with that date?
Do you know if any changes are proposed?
I know of no changes.
We can probably make it work.
They just made to ask for it.
Until January 19th?
December
December
9th.
9th.
Do we now? December 19th, yeah, 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank
Applicant has requested a holdover that will more than likely be granted. However, you do have the opportunity to speak for or against at this time, but you'll also get that opportunity at the official meeting. Is there anyone else here to speak for or against this application? Thank you. Item number 2, 1564 and 1568 Hertel Street, West Bay Academy subdivision. Subdivision is recommended for approval with the PUD and planning approval recommended for holdover and recommendation for approval of a sidewalk waiver. Is the applicant present? You wish to speak to any of these things, or? Okay. All right. Applicant is present and in agreement. The holdover till January 9th will most likely be granted at that time. You will have the opportunity to speak for or against it, but you do have that right at this time as well. Is there anyone else here to speak for or against this application? Thank you. Item number 3, new subdivision applications, 256 and 260 St. Louis Street, Greer's on St. Louis Street subdivision, recommended for tentative approval. The applicant present. You in agreement with staff recommendations? Applicant is present and in agreement. Is there anyone else here to speak for this? Anyone here to speak against? Thank you. Item number 4, 2411 Drake Street and 2414 Myrtle Halls Estate subdivision, recommended for tentative approval. The applicant noted that they're in agreement with staff recommendations. Is there anyone else here to speak for or against this application? Thank you. Item number 5, 551, 53, 55, and 57 St. Louis Street, Cedar and Saint subdivision, recommended for tentative approval.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you should have, all of you should have some revised recommendations. We looked into the right-of-way issue additionally and found that other subdivision requests along Cedar Street and Lawrence Street did not require right-of-way dedication. Therefore, we've changed our recommendations to also waive that requirement. I recommend that the commission waive that requirement for this application as well.
Okay. Is the applicant present? Are you aware of revised staff recommendations?
Yes, we are aware of the revised recommendation, and additionally understand that the waiver from section 5B16 for the 25-foot turning radiuses at the corners of the side streets would also need a waiver. Other than that, when that agreement was listed.
And his reference to the corner radius, there is a requirement in the subdivision regulations for the corner radius. However, that can be waived by the commission if it so chooses. However, that should also be coordinated through the engineering and traffic and engineering departments, because they may still require some level of corner radius. So the planning commission can waive its requirements for the subdivision regulations, but any radius dedication still has to be worked out with engineering and traffic engineering.
Okay.
If you look at the engineering condition, it's number 6, letter K.
J and K.
J,
J is the quarterly number 7.
Well, there's one on 7. Wait. For subdivision regulations, on the sheet of paper I have in front of me, it says letter K, dedicate radius 25 feet or as approved. Or as approved. So as approved covers the flexibility necessary.
Okay.
And that's for the corner.
Yes, ma'am. And that has been waived for other subdivisions downtown as well, since the adoption of the Downtown Development District regulations.
It has been.
Yes, ma'am.
so on this revised set of conditions, the applicant is agreeable to everything except for 6K and 6A.
But both of them are written to provide the flexibility for the city engineer and traffic engineering to waive it.
So we've got the flexibility, traffic has the flexibility, so we can leave the condition in here.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So revised conditions as written, okay.
But that means that the traffic engineering department, if they need to get some of that corner, they could, for the subdivision, show that it's in the,
And so the applicant is agreeable to these revised conditions? Yes. Okay. And we didn't get your name for the record either. Sorry. We didn't get your name and address for the record.
It's Tom Nelson, Hargrove Engineers, 20 South Royal Street, Mobile.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak for or against this? Are there any other questions by commissioners? Thank you. New planning approval applications. Item number 6, 2300 Dog River Drive South. Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners recommended for approval. The applicant present. Are you in agreement with staff recommendations? Yes, sir. Applicant is present and in agreement. Is there anyone else here to speak for this? Anyone here to speak against? Thank you. That concludes our public hearing. We'll now enter into the deliberation. Beginning with item number 3703 Old Shell Road, Chinaberry subdivision. It's request to be held over till the December 19th meeting. I'll make that motion. Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item held over till December 19th. Item number 2, 1564 and 1568 Hertel Street and 1569 West Bay, a subdivision addition to. There's several different recommendations. Is there a motion for any?
Take them separately if we could, Mr. Chair. I'll make a motion to approve the subdivision based on staff recommendations.
Item properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of item A, approval of subdivision?
Aye.
Opposed? Item A passes. Item B,
The PUD and the planning approval move to hold that until the January the 9th, 2020 meeting.
second.
properly moved and seconded for holdover to the January 9th meeting. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Those two items, A, B, and C, will be held over until the January 9th meeting. Item D, sidewalk waiver.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded to grant sidewalk waiver. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Item D passes. Subdivision application, 256 and 260 St. Louis Street and 257 St. Anthony Greer's on St. Louis Street, recommended for tentative approval. Is there a motion?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Item number 4, 2411 Drake Street and 2414 Myrtle Street, Hall Estate Subdivision, recommended for approval. Is there a motion? Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Item number 5, 551, 53, 55, and 57 St. Louis Street, Cedar and Saint Subdivision, recommended for approval. Is there a motion?
Move to approve, subject to the conditions on the separate pay.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. New planning approval applications. Item number 6, 2300 Dog River Drive South, Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners of the City of Mobile, recommended for approval. Is there a motion?
But to approve based on staff recommendations and findings of facts A, B, C.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Pauses. Item passes. On item number 5, did we make clear that it was the amended? Okay, all right,
It is clear, yes.
thank you. Is there any other new or old business? All right, meeting
No,
adjourned.
sir.
All right, meeting adjourned.